And there he was, creeping and crawling through the house with his wry little smile on, thinking his plan would be accomplished. But there was one thing he had not accounted for. The Daily Solutions Podcast. Welcome.
Hey, everybody.
My name is Ashkahn.
My name is Graham.
And we are here to talk to you today.
So we'll do that as best we can. Today's question for us, from you, for us to answer to you is, what kind of hydrometer do you use, you being us in this case?
Us. Okay. All right. So I don't know the actual name of the place we get our hydrometers from. But
Isn't it Scientific?
Scientific American, at least
yeah.
used to be. I don't know if we still are exactly getting them there, and that was, I think, just like
exactly?
a Portland. We might get them online somewhere. But here's what you're looking for when you're looking for a hydrometer. First of all, you're looking for a specific gravity hydrometer. So there's nothing in there that's specifically about the salt water or anything like that. You're not looking for like an Epsom salt hydrometer or anything. You're just looking for something that measures specific gravity.
And within a certain range,
yeah,
right? Because specific gravity can be pretty broad.
Yeah.
You know, even lead has like a specific gravity of 10 or something like that, right?
And there's hydrometers for different applications, like brewing beer and things like that.
Battery acid is another common one.
Well, yeah. So but most of those are not actually in the right ranges for what you're looking for. So typically, you're looking on some sort of company or website that does make scientific equipment. So you're not going to find that's the most common place you're going to be able to find these on websites or somewhere in town or something like that, is that scientific equipment company. And basically you're looking for something that is the range of your float tank. So your float tanks, people have their float tanks sitting anywhere from maybe 1.24 specific gravity to like 1.29 or something. So it's not always easy finding exactly the right range on the hydrometers. Sometimes they go from 1.2 to 1.3. Which is okay, except that if you ever go above 1.3, then it's kind of nice to have something that shows you the higher numbers, but you never really want to be above there anyway, and you want to kind of be balancing down.
So if you could just magically produce a hydrometer at the right range, what do you think is the ideal range to be able to show on it?
Yeah, there's two different ways that I think are both pretty nice. One is just a single hydrometer that would show you your full range. Like if you had like a 2 to 1.33 hydrometer would be pretty great. The other one is like the smaller the range is, the easier it is to use because all the like numbers and lines and everything are bigger. So the other option, and we've done this sometimes when they've been out of other types of hydrometers, is you can get one that's like a 1.25 to 1.3, and that's going to serve your normal use, every kind of time that you're checking levels and filling things up. But then you're going to need another hydrometer with a bigger range when you're actually filling a float tank up from scratch or something like that. Mm-hmm. And another really common range I see all the time is 1.2 to 1.42. So we've done that before too. But I think now we have one. I'll have to check what we have. We break them so often that it's hard to keep up sometimes.
Yeah, we recommend getting fragile glass hydrometers.
So a couple more things to know about hydrometers. There is one other application that I know of so far that does conveniently happen to be in the same range as float tanks, which is what Graham was mentioning, battery acid.
Yep.
They keep the specific gravity of battery acid at actually like shockingly the right range. Like if you buy a little battery acid hydrometer, it even usually has like a little green range on it, which happens to line up with what the good range in a float tank is, which is really funny.
So the weird thing with those, despite specific gravity being something that should stay constant, is when we've gotten the battery acid ones to try out, because a lot of them are, you don't want to be touching battery acid with your bare hands, so they're kind of made for caustic solutions even, which is cool.
Yeah.
But they haven't given us the accuracy of the other hydrometer, and in fact seem like not even close to being able to kind of produce that same level of trustworthy results when I use just the little, again, like plastic, handheld, generic battery acid testers.
Right. So they're nice in the sense that they're usually like $1 and they're made of plastic and they have like a turkey baster type mechanism, which is convenient. But we found some that I don't know why, but weren't working at all. And then the ones that even do work well, it's just the specificity you're getting out of them is not anywhere like what you're getting out of these scientific glass hydrometers. So we haven't personally really found them to be useful enough to actually use in our float center. So we go with the, $35, $40 glass glass ones that you get. A couple other things to know about hydrometers. One is, you're taking a sample of the water in your tank into some sort of graduated or non-graduated cylinder, and then putting the hydrometer in there to see the levels. The other thing to know is that if that cylinder is too tight, that can actually cause the hydrometer reading to be inaccurate. So if you need to actually have a graduated cylinder that provides a little bit of space around your hydrometer, otherwise I think the surface tension of the water kind of like creates a false level that you see there if the size is too close together. So getting a nice well-sized one is going to make your levels more accurate.
And a note on that too, which is that because we're using glass kind of precision hydrometers, we don't want to put those inside the float tank. So, that's the reason that we're pulling out the water to test in the first place, rather than just letting the hydrometer float in the float tank. Is the idea of breaking glass inside your float tank just sounds like such a potentially awful, expensive mistake that there's no way we would even hold a glass object over the body of a float tank. It sounds just too risky. So that's why we're pulling it out and putting it into a smaller container and floating it there.
And it's easier to read. Otherwise you have to lean your face down to the water level of
and
inside
that's what all the
float
cool
tank.
kids are doing. So
the other thing to know about hydrometers, and this is more just like a useless piece of information.
They were invented by Mr. Hydrometer back in the late 1700s.
Most of the ones that I see, all the ones I've ever seen just on these websites, are usually calibrated for, I think it's 65 degrees Fahrenheit. Mm-hmm. So they are based off of a temperature. And I've never attempted to do anything other than just buy those ones and think it's probably fine. I'm pretty sure everybody in the industry and all these numbers we're basing all these conversations off of is using hydrometers that are calibrated for a lower temperature than our float tanks actually are. And my guess is it's just probably small enough of a difference, and the actual amount of salt in a float tank is not as exact of a science necessary to care about that. But
probably like the error in us visually reading the hydrometer is more than the difference in that small amount of temperature. But
or maybe it's more and we just don't know because we've never had anyone use an accurate one to see what the difference is.
Along those lines too, it will actually be affected by your altitude and the air pressure on it. So your readings will be slightly different at sea level in California than they will in Colorado too.
But at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter. Like the levels you're trying to get your float tanks to have enough wiggle room in them that I don't think you really care too much about little margins of error and stuff like that. So and buy multiple.
and name them and put googly eyes on them.
Because you're going to break them. You can't put googly eyes on the hydrometer. I think they'd probably mess with
we put it on
its calibration.
I guess that's another thing. We do have nice padded cases for them that are essentially like PVC tubes that have caps
foam in them.
and foam in them. So
and they sell those. That's like a product you can buy usually from the same website. You'll find a hydrometer.
You'll have to attach your own googly eyes, but it doesn't take very long, and they're pretty inexpensive.
So that sums that up.
All right, thanks everyone, and especially the person who sent us that question. And if you want to send us your own, go to floatanksolutions.com/podcast.
Yep, you're going to hear us talk about it at some point.
Just
maybe.
Like every day. All right, thanks everybody.
All right.